Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're taking a deep dive into a book that, well, when it first came out in 1918, it really stirred things up. And honestly, it still provokes thought today, over a century later. It's H.L. Mencken's In Defense of Women. Now, this book tackles what Mencken himself called the woman question, right at the start of some major societal shifts. And it gives this surprisingly candid, often pretty outrageous, and yeah, definitely unique view on gender roles and norms. It's quite the masterclass in provocative writing.
It really is. And just to give you a sense of where we're headed with this deep dive into Mencken's thinking, his main point, and it's definitely provocative, is that women are, in many fundamental ways, actually superior to men.
Superior. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he paints women as remarkably intelligent, incredibly realistic, and almost totally unsentimental.
Consential.
According to him,
Yeah.
yes. He sees them constantly navigating and often, manipulating what he considers the more childish and sentimental nature of men, and even society itself. And this idea, this theme, it runs through pretty much everything he discusses: marriage, beauty, even politics and domestic life.
That's quite a premise to start with, especially for a book called In Defense of Women. Now, Mencken's voice as a writer, it's very distinctive, right? People described him as a stylist with a heavy touch whose typewriter just sort of reminted every thought.
Right, creating an astounding verbal circus, as someone put it.
Exactly. But what's really fascinating, and you touched on this, is what was behind that voice, especially for this book.
Ah, yes. Well, the truly intriguing part is that Mencken apparently wrote In Defense of Women as what he called an extremely pianissimo piece.
Pianissimo, like musically, very quiet.
Exactly. Very subdued. He meant it to be low-key. It was actually a clever strategy, really, to dodge the censors during World War I.
Ah, okay, because of his other views.
Precisely. Mencken had these, pro-German and anti-democratic opinions that were extremely unpopular, even dangerous to voice openly back then.
Right.
So this book, which looks like it's about women, was actually a way for him to kind of smuggle his underlying Nietzschean ideas. Things about individual will, power, questioning morality, past the public and the authorities without setting off alarm bells.
So he's using the woman question as a kind of Trojan horse for his philosophy. That's pretty crafty.
It was definitely strategic.
And right near the start, he makes this observation that, gosh, even though it's from 1918, it still feels strangely relevant. He talks about the increased leisure of American women, arguing they'd been freed from the need for productive labor, but hadn't really picked up other intellectual or social duties to fill the gap.
Right. And he claimed this caused all sorts of problems that, sociologists and divorce courts and psychiatrists were still grappling with.
Yeah, still spinning on, as he put it.
And that idea of increased leisure, it leads straight into his really core, kind of a shocking premise. Women are better than men because they're less civilized.
Okay, less civilized. On the surface, that sounds like an insult. But with Mencken, there's a twist. What did he actually mean by that? What parts of civilization did he think women rejected?
Well, he meant that women, generally speaking, looked down on what he called all the practical skills of the world.
Like what?
Things like law, which he said they saw as mostly a sham, politics, unspeakably low, business, a degrading and childish occupation.
Wow. So he's saying they see through all the male-dominated stuff.
That's the idea. In his view, it wasn't a flaw. It showed their superior intelligence, their pragmatism. They weren't fooled by the trivialities and, frankly, the often dishonest parts of these civilized male professions. They saw the facade.
And this is where he really flips the script on intelligence, doesn't he? He argues women have this fine and fluent intelligence, even a kind of monopoly on the subtler, more useful types.
He does. He goes really far, suggesting that what men call the true fundamentals of intelligence, like discerning truth from illusion, are actually fundamentally feminine traits.
He even said, didn't he, that complete masculinity and stupidity are often indistinguishable. That's quite a statement.
It's incredibly bold. And he contrasts this feminine sense with men's professional skills, their empty talents and bag of tricks in business or law.
Right, the stuff men pride themselves on.
Yeah. Mencken argued these things required very little actual, wisdom. He said they put no more strain on mental powers than a chimpanzee suffers in learning how to catch a penny.
Ouch. So much for the captains of industry.
He was pretty blunt about it.
Sure.
He saw intellectual lethargy and an appalling lack of ordinary sense in the typical businessmen and professionals he knew.
So while men are busy fixing clocks or running factories, his small expertness women excel elsewhere.
Exactly. In fields needing ingenuity, quick comprehension, courage, and above all, a capacity for penetrating and dominating character.
Like nursing, he mentions.
Sick nursing, yes, as a key example. And then in classic Mencken style, he really pushes it, saying that the work of the average prostitute demanded more mental agility than the average man's job.
Whoa. Okay, that's designed to shock. How does he even begin to justify that?
By emphasizing the constant need to read people, to assess character, to maneuver psychologically, skills he felt were lacking in many routine male jobs. It's about a different kind of intelligence, one focused on people and immediate reality.
Okay.
And it loops back to his point about women's practical sense. Men might talk big, but they constantly defer to women's intuition.
Which Mencken says isn't intuition at all.
Right, he just calls it sense, plain old common sense. He insisted women decide the larger questions of life correctly and quickly because they have sense. They see things at a glance that men miss, even with, quote, searchlights and telescopes.
No magic, just clearer vision.
Less clouded by sentimentality, in his view.
And speaking of sentimentality, or the lack of it, his views on marriage really bring this realism to the forefront. It's not exactly presented as a loving partnership, is it?
Not at all. It's basically a battle, a contest where women, because they're unsentimental and cool-headed, almost always win.
He flat out says it's in a man's interest to avoid it, and a woman's interest to lock down a favorable marriage, ASP.
Absolutely. From Mencken's angle, men get nothing of net value from marriage. They get pushed into these abhorrent compromises through female persuasion and intimidation.
And the weapon used against them.
Their own inherent sentimentality, that's the key.
Huh.
Mencken believed men cherish the illusion that they're in charge, even when they're clearly being steered into something that doesn't really benefit them.
This ruthless realism extends even to beauty, doesn't it? He's incredibly harsh about the female form.
Oh, brutally so. He claims the female body is very defective in form. And then there's that astonishing line comparing it unfavorably to the average milk jug or even cuspidor.
It's unbelievable. He basically says women are always trying to hide their bodies, except maybe for sexual purposes.
It's a startling assessment. But then conversely, he says men with their Herculean capacity for illusion are just easily fooled by this perceived beauty.
Which he calls almost always a pure illusion.
Right. He even says a man often doesn't really see his wife for years, just taken in by tricks in his own romantic ideas.
Why does he think men are so easily fooled? Back to sentimentality again.
Seems to be. A desire to believe in the ideal, maybe, rather than face the Mencken-esque reality.
And women, meanwhile, are playing it cool.
According to Mencken, yes. They rarely let emotions sway them while the principal business, securing a husband, is ongoing, showing emotion too soon. That would look like imbecility to other women.
So it's a game of strategy, and men are at a disadvantage because they actually feel things.
That's his argument. It's a contest of wills, and sentimentality is a handicap.
And this leads to his rather cynical take on the actual husband.
Yes. He suggests a woman's ideal man is often, an abstract dream or a movie star. Then she goes down the list of possibilities.
Getting less desirable each time.
Until, facing spinsterhood, she marries the ultimate numbskull, as he so charmingly puts it.
Charming indeed. So the average husband is basically a second-rater.
The consolation prize, yeah. Someone attained and disdained.
Which in turn explains why he thinks bachelors are superior.
Exactly. Their ability to avoid marriage proves they're less sentimental, closer to the clear-headedness of the enemy sex. Remaining single is a sign of wisdom for Mencken.
Okay, so shifting from the personal to the social, what about domestic life? Housekeeping.
He had thoughts there too. He famously complained about the notorious villainousness of American cookery.
Okay. And why did he think that was?
He blamed women's active intelligence. He thought they were too smart to focus on what he saw as stupid and meticulous enterprises like complex housekeeping.
So being bad at cooking was a sign of intelligence. That's a take.
It's certainly a Mencken take. He also mentioned a deficiency in conscientiousness about those duties.
He didn't pull any punches. And how did he see this playing out in the legal sphere?
Well, he observed a big shift. A century earlier, the husband was the boss, lordly and autonomous. But by his time, he argued, the wife had gained a huge guaranteed share of the husband's property.
While being immune to penalties if she, say, neglected the home or kids.
Largely immune to penalties for crimes of omission. as he termed it. He saw the legal system shifting decidedly in women's favor.
And then there's politics. Suffrage was a huge issue then. What were his predictions? They were pretty wild, weren't they?
Oh, completely startling. He claimed women were naturally skeptical of all reforms that rely on mass voting. He said they don't really believe in democracy, even at her own fireside.
Okay. So what did he think would happen once they got the vote?
He predicted that once women got used to the ballot, they'd use their greater instinct for reality, their pragmatism again, to actually initiate measures against democracy.
Against democracy? How?
By restricting voting rights to the intelligent minority. He even tossed out a ratio, maybe 6 women to 1 man, to make democracy safe for a democracy. That's a chilling thought, especially coming from him.
Definitely unnerving. And he also tackled myths about men, didn't he? Like male promiscuity.
Yes, he dismissed the whole picture of male carnality as mostly fable.
A fable? But why?
He said it was puffed up by men's own vanity and by vice crusaders. The average guy, Mencken claimed, is quite incapable of all that exciting stuff. He likes the courage, the money,
And has a conscience.
and possesses a conscience.
Mm.
Mencken called it the secret scandal of Christendom, that in reality, most men are faithful to their wives.
So the opposite of the common image. Interesting. What about pain and suffering?
He had a peculiar view there, too. He noted women's delight in martyrdom and their eager flair for bearing physical pain.
Delight. Really?
Well, he argued that while maybe less physically strong overall, they endured acute pain with more resignation, sensing the dramatic effect of it all.
Ah, the performance of suffering.
Exactly. Which led him to conclude, again provocatively, that no woman could have invented chloroform or even alcohol.
Because those things offer escape.
An escape from experiences he thought women actually relish for their dramatic possibilities.
It's a pretty bleak view. He even called womanliness itself a kind of disease under Christianity, right?
He did. He linked it to a suppressed revolt against the cultural restrictions placed on them, leading to psychological issues. It's a very harsh critique of the culture of his time.
And this perhaps links to his ideas about women and religion, or ethics.
Possibly. He felt women were far too intelligent to make effective ecclesiastics. Their sharp sense of reality, he argued, clashed with the whole sacerdotal masquerade, the rituals, the dogma.
They see through it.
They see through it, yes. Less susceptible to the maudlin sentimentalities he thought men enjoyed in religion.
So, looking ahead from his 1918 viewpoint, how did he see the emancipation of women playing out?
Well, he mused that as women gained economic independence, that overmastering desire for marriage might fade. They'd compete directly with men in the workforce.
Which sounds like progress, but he saw a downside.
He did. He worried they might have to sacrifice some of that genuine intelligence, that pragmatic sense, for a more puerile and cheerfully mechanical expertness, basically, becoming more like the men whose jobs they were taking, a kind of leveling down.
And he had that pretty stark prediction about future wars causing a shortage of men.
Yes, a perilous shortage. He suggested this might force the more intelligent women to reconsider marriage norms, maybe even polygamy.
To secure a superior man rather than the average husband.
Right, the serf and prisoner at one stroke, as he put it.
Yeah.
It's a very pragmatic, almost chillingly rational view of adapting to social disruption.
And yet, after all that cynicism, all that battle of the sexes talk, he ends the book with this vision of eternal romance. It's quite a shift.
It is surprising, isn't it? He paints this picture, him lounging on a divan, smoking, listening to a good-looking and well-dressed woman with a soft voice talk about, well, anything but the serious stuff.
Right, no politics, no business, no religion, no metaphysics, just talk about books, music, plays, people.
Yet he describes drifting off to sleep, listening to her exquisite murmur.
And his final thought on that scene is about how beautiful falling asleep is, how it's sleep poetized and made doubly sweet. It's such a personal, almost gentle image to end on.
It really is. It feels like a glimpse into his own, maybe unexpected desires amidst all the intellectual fireworks.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean? Mencken's defense of women, over 100 years old now, it really pushes you to think about, well, uncomfortable ideas about human nature, doesn't it? It challenges a lot of basic assumptions about men and women.
It absolutely does. And his portrayal, women as these pragmatic realists constantly outsmarting sentimental men, it's cynical, yes, but there's a strange kind of admiration in there, too. So the question for you, listening now, is, does any of that radical perspective on intelligence, love, civilization itself, does it resonate at all with what you see today? Or does it just feel like, ancient history, a relic? What really stand out to you about his arguments, and how do they maybe challenge or perhaps even confirm your own take on gender dynamics and that eternal battle of the sexes?